Well, folks, I'm LA Little with TA today. I'm going to bring another update here. I'm going to focus on the SOXX, kind of unscripted. This might be an easier way to do it instead of trying to script it out. Certainly it won't take as much time, probably. If you like what you see, I ask you to share it, click the subscribe button, hit the like button. That helps the algos hopefully find me at some point. It is what it is. I try to do these as often as I can. I have a life, so I don't spend as much time doing this as I used to, but I still think it's helpful. Feedback I get says that. So let me start with the SOXX. And so this is the SOXX itself. You can see here, big destruction. Why am I interested in SOXX? Well, because I want to buy it at some point. But I want to see the destruction that's sufficient, and I want to see a turn that tells me it's time to buy. And the best way to do that is to analyze the charts, look for a place where it makes sense, right? And then take your stab. Now, if I'm looking for a place that makes sense, if I'm out here on the monthly, certainly out here it makes sense. And I say that because, the retest regen is this big, heavy anchor bar here. Right, it's got a lot of volume on it. It's been tested right there as it broke out. It's coming back in now. I would still expect it to get bought. There was also kind of this support that was right below it. So somewhere between the 180 and whatever that top is, 186. Right, so that's not that far away really. So 206. So you're talking about $20, another 10%. Let's go over to the weekly. If I look at the weekly, this looks a little dangerous in terms of setup. See this swing point low here and this one here? They're very close together. When you get congruent swing point lows and you break them, right, you could get an escalation down. And this has already done some things that you'd rather it not do. If you're looking at it on a longer term basis, it's okay, but on a shorter term basis, broke a swing point low, which sets up the bearish retest regen. The bullish retest regen was here. And so any kind of a bounce back up, right, whether it's from here or lower, any kind of a bounce back up is going to find resistance in this area, in this test. And it's also going to find resistance from the volumes and the congruent behavior that you have on these bars. And so I think any kind of a bounce from here, says that you're going to get to, what is that, 246 is the high. 235 on that one, and the low over here is 236. So I think about 235 is about as much as you can expect. That would be a bearish retest regen that would probably get a turn right there is what I'm talking about, and send you lower. And so that would set up potentially an ABCD structure to get you lower, etc. Right? So all these things are things you have to think about. But the first bounce is the best bounce, and I'm talking about on the weekly here. So if it's going to bounce before it breaks these, right, you could get a move up to about 235. So you're talking about 35 on 204 or 200 or so when you take it. That's not a bad return, right? You can pull a 15% return, and so that's not a bad trade, right? And it probably comes within a week and a half, I would guess. So anyway, that's the trade setup. Now, the danger here is it breaks. If it breaks this swing point and that swing point, it's going to quickly go back to here. And this is the area of the big better buy, right? This is a bullish retest regen. I can just type it in as I talk. That retest regen hasn't been tested. I don't believe 178.96, 170 has been tested. So it's not as good as I expected. Anytime you get a test within 6 bars, which this was, right, it's not nearly as good if it's greater than 6 bars and no test. And so I thought this was going to be that, but that's not what it is. So even this is not a great buy. So I think we ought to just forget about this and say, okay, the best buy is going to be right here for now, first bounce, and then flip it and take it short probably. Why do I say that? Well, I don't have it up, and I'm not going to pull it up, but if you go look at the S&P, if you look at the index, if you look at the overseas charts, if you look anywhere, right, these things are all setting up ranges, right? The first set of ranges for this is probably here, but it could expand to here before it's over easily, right? And those lows down there, 174, go back to the monthly. 174 puts you in the middle of this guy, or top third. That could easily happen. And so, you know, when I look at that, it's like, okay, that's probably the trade if you're going to make a trade in the SOXX, if you really want to make a trade. On the risk side of it, if you're still holding it, you really need to protect if it breaks these two bars, because it's quickly going to run down to this one, and that's another 25 points lower. Okay, now go inside of it and look at what the big weightings are. NVDA actually is number 2. Let me change that. So the largest weighting right now, AVGO. If we look at its chart, let's just see what these charts look like and see how they're correcting. So this one actually looks good. Now here's a good trade. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's the trade I was just talking about on the SOXX. This is a breakout, this bar, and you go more than 6 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so you go 6 bars before you hit back in. Now let's make certain. 145.52. Yes. And so this has a very high probability of turning and flipping back up. As a matter of fact, if I was going to make a trade in the SOXX, this actually looks like a better trade. And so I would be focused on this. Where can it bounce to? Well, you would think it would bounce right to this area right here. That's where the heavy red is on the TA Today charts, and that is where the overlap of these two big bars are. So I would think worst case 165 area, best case 174, maybe 175. Okay, and you're sitting at 143 as of Friday's close. Not a bad trade. And so this actually looks like a good a percentage bet. It's almost 10%. That will help the SOXX out quite a bit. NVIDIA is the next one. Let's look at it. If we look at NVIDIA, and let's just flip to the weekly. NVIDIA is trying to break a swing point low. Matter of fact, it's extended enough that it really should break a swing point low. It needs to. 106.94. It's right at it. The sweet buy on this one is just a little bit deeper. And so I don't know that you're going to see that this time. It's probably going to be next time if AVGO starts to run. NVIDIA probably goes with it. And so, you know, this one doesn't have the best trade. And besides, even if you were to buy it here, you know, where it is at 107, where can you expect it to go to? Maybe about 125. So not as good a percentages as AVGO. Let's go to the next weighting. So NVIDIA could bounce from here. There's nothing definitely telling you that though. If we look at this AMD, next highest weighting, this one looks like crap. Now it is coming into, well, same thing here folks. Look at this. You got a bullish retest regen, first test right here. Right, hasn't been tested before. I don't believe that tested. 133.74 did not test. And so that's the first test back, way more than 6 bars. This should get bought. Even as ugly as it is, it should get a bounce. So that's 2 out of 3 so far telling you bounce. Let's look at AMAT, the next weighting. If we look at AMAT, what does it say? If we go to the weekly, AMAT just broke a swing point low. It's trying to break another one. It's already broken this one up here. There's just nothing here on this chart to tell us it's going to hold. The only thing that you can look at is this anchor bar. That anchor bar has this swing point low. We're coming right into it. That's what this is, telling you demand at that point. It's not heavy like you see down here, but there is demand at that point. So this one could bounce. Not a high probability that it will bounce, but if the other stuff starts to bounce, it probably goes with them. Let's go one more deep here. Let's take Qualcomm, which is the next one in terms of weighting. And yeah, that's probably about 35% of the weighting. Qualcomm has the same problem that we saw on on AVG on the SOXX itself, right? And that is it has these 2 swing point lows set up. It's coming into them with volume. Busted a retest regen here, so that's already broken, and there's nothing here to tell me it's going to turn. So this one doesn't look particularly good. So we got three. The three look like they're going to bounce right away, right? One maybe, or excuse me, two bounce right away, two maybes, one that not clear at all that it would bounce. So I'm going to go one more deep here. I want to see one more. Let's look at KLAC and see what that one looks like real quick. And this one, same scenario. I don't see anything here. It tells me this one's going to bounce, and this also has the dangerous setup down here. So I expect, from what I'm seeing here, decent probability you get a bounce. I would be playing the ones that are strong. Matter of fact, if I'm going to play anything in this sector right now, I probably wouldn't do the SOXX. I wouldn't do NVDA. I'd probably do AVGO. That's probably the best setup right now. And you don't have to risk a lot on it, right? You've got this big bar, anchor bar. You got your retest regen, more than 6 bars. It really shouldn't get more than about a third deep, which is about the bottom of that bar. So you don't have to risk very much at all for a trade. That's the way this looks. Hope that helps. Take care.